Hello there. What is going on, everyone? We're talking about Star Wars Shatterpoint today, and I'm talking about my big issue with Star Wars Shatterpoint. What is the problem? Now, this is not meant to be a dig at the game, and it's not meant to be, me kind of trying to do a takedown or a hit job on Star Wars Shatterpoint, because I think there's a lot of great things going for it. But the more I've been playing it lately, and then also comparing it to other games, and largely after playing Marvel Crisis Protocol recently, which this game has probably the most in common with out of all of the games that are out there, I think it's helped kind of shine a light on a key part of this game that I think either needs to change or possibly be adjusted. There's a couple of ways I think that could happen, but I think that there's one kind of problem that kind of stands out above every other thing. And I'm going to talk about that in today's video. If you guys are familiar with Shatterpoint, I'd love to get your thoughts on whether you agree or disagree, or if you've played it at all, let me know down in the comments. If you're looking to get into Shatterpoint, this isn't meant to discourage you, because I do think there's plenty of hope to fix this one little issue. And this issue isn't so big that it's going to have me saying you shouldn't play this game, because there's a whole lot going for it. But that being said, it's not a perfect game, and I would say possibly far from it with its current state of the game, although it's got a bright future ahead, and a lot of these things are very fluid, and a lot of things can change about a game like this. So we've seen it already in other games, errata, rules changes, new mission packs, new scenarios, new units that sort of change the game. There's a lot of different things that can change the game. Now, I've been kind of building up the intro for a while, so I'm going to jump into the meat of this, of the talking points here in just a second, but I want to remind you guys, we are doing 12 Days of Life Day. It is a bunch of giveaways. We're going to be doing 12 different giveaways all throughout the month of December. If you want to have a chance to enter to win any of those, you just have to be a subscriber and leave a comment on this or one of my videos. There will be some Amazon gift cards in there. There'll be some promos. There'll be some surprises in there as well, too. So definitely stay tuned for that. I'll be announcing those at different times throughout the month of December, usually towards the end of my videos. So if you're already subscribed, you're already halfway there. Leave me a comment letting me know what you think about Star Wars Shatterpoint down in the video description below. With all that being said, let's go ahead and jump into what is my issue with Star Wars Shatterpoint, and it is the lack of killing. And granted, killing, maybe defeating a unit or actually miniatures being removed from the board is my problem with this game, and I think it's something that we first talked about when Will Schick came on the channel. We did a nice interview, and we talked about how can you table somebody? Can I take care of all of your units? And I think there was some pushback against that philosophy of saying that you wouldn't really be able to table anybody, and I didn't realize how literal he was being. It's hard enough just to kill a single unit, let alone try to table somebody. And in fact, in most of my games, no units are killed throughout the entire game. I have had games where a single unit was killed, but it's very rare to lose multiple units in a game, at least in the games that I have played. It is certainly possible to do that. You could certainly manufacture that. You could ignore the objectives completely and everybody meet in the northwest corner of the board and just duke it out while nobody, builds any momentum, and see how that goes. But with all that being said, there's a lot of firepower. There's a lot of attacking. Most of it deals with trying to move your opponents off of the objectives. This is, for most intents and purposes, an area control game. In the core game, there's 9 different points, and then in the first mission pack, there's 7 different points that you're trying to control. And to control those and to retain control of those, you have to keep a presence there, and to try to keep your opponents from getting there, and to contest these objectives. And it's all about contesting objectives that are on a piece of terrain or on a part of the map, maybe on the ground or higher up. And even when your characters are killed, they have a wound threshold that they basically they can get wounded, and then they're not contesting objectives anymore, but they're still present for a lot of different game effects. I had a game not long ago that featured a lot of droids, and There's a lot of droid effects that allowed even droids that were wounded to still be able to be affected by certain game effects that would allow them to attack again, for example. And of course, they can't suffer any more wounds, and I can't wound somebody that's already wounded. So they were basically invulnerable zombie droids. They could be pushed, but since they're not contesting an objective, it's less valuable to even push them, and pushing them isn't killing them. And then, you activate them again, after another, several rounds of play. By the time they're, you shuffle your cards and then they come out again. And then if they're wounded again, then they become injured again. Then they're going to die the next time they activate, but they still stay on the board until they can activate that one last time. And so, for most units in this game, they're going to get 3 lives, or they're going to be able to activate at least 3 times, with a lot of units going more than that, even 4 times for a lot of the primaries that have a higher wound threshold. So I say all that to say that, you have a lot of characters that are designed to kind of push a lot of damage. Not everybody. You have different things. Certain people are more about mobility. Some people are more about support. Some people are more about pushing other characters off of objectives. That seems to be the most valuable type of unit. And then you have a lot of characters, a whole archetype that is damage-dealing characters, but whether they're melee or ranged. And that seems to be like where this game falls short for me. To compare this a little bit to Marvel Crisis Protocol, Marvel Crisis Protocol definitely has killing. You get that 1 extra life for most characters. There are a few exceptions, but you get that 1 extra life where, you know what, you got dazed, and now all of a sudden you're kind of like the equivalent of being wounded. Now you're kind of invulnerable, but you count as being off the board. Nothing can affect you, and you don't get to do any of your good, positive stuff. You don't get to interact with anything. You're effectively out of the game for the rest of the round. Next run you come back, then you can be killed, and then you're off. And there's just I feel like in Marvel Crisis Protocol there's a whole lot more incentive to wounding or /dazing another character, and then eventually knocking them out or getting them off the board. For 1, they could be holding objectives that then all of a sudden they drop. For 2, this play structure is different. You have a whole game round where I activate all of my stuff, you activate all of your stuff, when we go back and forth. And if I start knocking you out of activations, then I have the luxury of being able to go last and not have to worry about how you react to my last couple of activations. So that's another advantage. So there's a whole lot more advantage in Marvel Crisis Protocol to actually, to do the combat and to try to knock somebody out or to kill somebody. I'm just calling it killing, but we're talking about basically removing miniatures from the board. Whole lot more valuable in that. Extremely valuable in Star Wars Legion or Armada or X-Wing. And those games are definitely more largely about removing miniatures from the board, whereas Shatterpoint is all about just pushing them away while you control objectives. And that's fine that this is a different game, but the problem is you have an entire archetype that is designed to deal damage. You have half the characters in the game or half the expansions in the game have a lightsaber, where lightsabers are, like thematically should be out there cutting things and doing combat, in a game that doesn't feel like it's really about combat and is more about just pushing. And lightsabers aren't really pushing weapons; they're slicing, they're cutting in half weapons. So that's kind of my big problem with Shatterpoint. Now, obviously, if you do wound somebody, you get something. There is momentum gained from wounding a unit. You do gain a little bit of advantage from it, but I don't feel like that's enough. Gaining momentum is nice. It can help kind of push a little bit towards gaining, possibly winning a struggle for a round. But if you're behind, it's not necessarily enough to swing things. It can be in some games, but it's usually not, especially once a unit's already wounded and can still be activated by things. I feel like that's maybe a rule that could potentially change. And I'm going to talk about that more in a little bit. But it's also the fact that there's no slowdown, too. So I don't even get the advantage of being able to activate 2 units back to back if something like that happens, because you just keep going until all of your cards are out, and then and then we just keep going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. I could potentially wound somebody that then you pull their card, they come right back and then wound me right back, and then it's just nothing comes off the board. And another thing about it is you kind of have some control, because let's just say I've got my Mandalorians that are out there, and you've already wounded them once. They come back, they're injured. I activate them. They do something, and let's say you wound them again. I then can still wait if their card ever comes up again. First off, I don't have to activate them with a Shatterpoint card, which definitely don't want to do that unless I want them to come off the board. But I can just wait until the whole next round. When their card comes up, I can put it into reserve and then just save them until the end of like the third round. And a lot of games I play don't go that far anyway. So if I don't want them to come off the board, I have some tools to help me make sure that you don't kill anybody. So, it's a little bit of almost an insurance policy with being able to put, a card into that standby zone. So, or in reserve. So I feel like, all of these things together kind of paint this picture that just, killing units or removing miniatures from the board happens extremely rarely. When it does happen, is not enough reward to actually, it should be a really big deal. Like if I can take your Asajj Ventress off the board, if I can actually kill her the 3 or 4 times it takes to actually get you to activate her again and pick her up and she's removed from the board, it should be worth something more than just a single momentum, which I can get for just being behind you automatically. So gaining momentum, doesn't feel like it scales across all the different ways that give you momentum. Maybe if it gave you 2 or even 3, maybe if it gave you a momentum for every wound, or every wound threshold, or every time the character was wounded or something like that, all at once. Like when they come off, if you got you had a stamina of 3, well then you get 3 for finally removing them. Then maybe that would be a little bit better, right? So there's a lot of little errata rules things that could deal with that. Or maybe if it should just move the struggle 1 more instead of giving you 1 more momentum. There's a lot of little things that it could do. There could be more of a global effect, and or they could just change the rules a little bit about that. But I think there's another way that, and I'm not saying they must change the rules, but if enough people agree, then maybe there's enough reason to do so. The other thing that is probably an easier way to do this is through another mission pack. Now, we do know there's a 3rd mission pack coming. We don't know really anything about it other than the game was play tested with it. Could it be that the 3rd mission pack is more of a combat-oriented mission pack? Some people have said that maybe the 2nd pack is a little bit more combat-oriented because it does push the objectives a little bit closer together. But still being close together doesn't necessarily mean that combat is going to be more rewarding. This is more of a Shatterpoint-themed mission pack, if you ask me. Because a mission pack itself can easily have overall rules, plus it can have special rules that come out on each different phase that can change the way the game has worked. And all it would take is a mission pack that gives you additional momentum for wounding a unit, or moves the struggle a little bit further for wounding a unit, or maybe totally changes the concept of the game and maybe removes everybody's stamina down by 1 at the start of the game, and and all of a sudden now the stakes are a little bit higher. That could be a really interesting way to make the game more interesting. Maybe a rules change that says, once you do have a wound token, you can take more wounds, and if you're able to get double that threshold, you're instantly removed, or something like that, as an option for play. And there's a whole mini game that goes into whose cards are you going to use, because this is again not necessarily a guaranteed thing. And if you want to be prepared for multiple situations, I could go into a game of Shatterpoint right now and I don't have to bring any heavy hitters or damage dealers, with one exception, that Anakin Skywalker gives you a little bit more incentive for actually wounding people, but he's the only one right now that really does that. And so outside of the single exception of Anakin Skywalker, the game's largely just not really about combat. And so I feel like the character, like the Darth Vader type characters, the B2 super battle droids, the Mace Windu's, and the people who are your heavy hitters, aren't really able to find their sweet spot in a game that is in an IP for Star Wars. It should absolutely be more combat oriented than area control. I mean, I think Star Wars, I think all these Mandalorians and lightsabers and all this really cool stuff, and we're clashing and shooting and blasting and using the Force and doing all this cool stuff, and it's all just to stand on the token. That doesn't seem as fun. So in addition to all the reasons that not removing a unit from the board doesn't feel rewarding as far as the gameplay. It's also not rewarding as far as theme. Like, Anakin should be able to slice down some B1 battle droids, and they're done. But in Shatterpoint right now, they can effectively be immortal, and they'll stay on the board forever. You know, especially with their built-in ability to kind of put themselves at the bottom of your pile. They can make sure that they activate last, and if I don't want them dead, I can make sure they last a full 3 turns or more. And also, nobody's really getting killed on the first activation because you're on your own deployment zone. I mean, it might be a little different if everybody deployed right in the center, right on top of each other. It might be a little crazy, too. But I guess that's my point, is it's just not enough reason to do combat, not enough reason to try to get somebody's miniatures taken off the board in this game. And I understand that one of the reasons is they want you to be able to play with your toys, and I think that's a noble effort, but I feel like the balance just isn't quite there. And I feel like Marvel Crisis Protocol hits it perfectly square on the head, because everybody does have that second chance. Well, for the most part, there's certain characters like Hulk that only have 1 life, but they have a huge wound threshold. But there's those characters that, everybody has a second chance, but beating somebody and getting them like off the board really matters, and you feel like there's incentive to doing it. And that's I guess my problem with Shatterpoint. Again, it could be easily fixed. There's a whole lot of other great things about Shatterpoint too. Beautiful miniatures, much easier play. The terrain is more meaningful. It's very meaningful, as a matter of fact. You don't have to get those team tactics cards that Marvel Crisis Protocol has. So, it's like, if I pick these guys, I don't have to make any other decisions. There's really not as much to list building. And the fact that you can build your dream teams and even go across arrows is really, really cool. So Shatterpoint's got so many pieces of the puzzle that work for it, and I think that's just the one critical piece that is needed. Let me know if you guys agree down in the comments, and I'd love to hear some of your thoughts. And also, let me know if you guys have come anywhere close in your games to actually tabling someone, because I don't think it's even possible unless both players are trying very, very, very hard to make sure that that happens. So I'll talk to you guys later. I want to thank you all so much. Big thanks to my patrons. You guys are out of this world and help make this channel possible. I will talk to you later. May the Force be with you. Live long and prosper. Be excellent to each other. Party on, dudes, and always wash your socks.